So today for our January cover feature here on Breakout Magazine, how could we start any better than the Gospel Music Association New Artist of the Year and the Breakout Single of the Year with Still Waters? Leanna Crawford, welcome to our readers and our listeners.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you.
So 2025 was somewhat of a pretty massive year for you, right?
It was. It was a very exciting
Yes,
year.
and congratulations.
Thank
And
you.
by the way, your performance at the Doves was just blew me away, and my whole group from Canada that came down with me. It was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I that's so kind of you. I was pretty overwhelmed. I was very excited to get to do that, and it felt very surreal to get to that was my first time singing in Bridgestone as well, which was really fun. And
Wow.
it was so special, and to have, the choir and orchestra part of it was really special. And yeah, it was very sweet day for me.
That was a moment for sure.
hmm
And it must have taken like half a day to get in that dress. I mean, that was a fantastic, just beautiful uh, wardrobe you had. Yeah.
Thank you. It was wild. That dress, it was so funny because backstage to walk through, because I had to like also do sound check in that dress because it was such a situation. So we
Ah,
had to like make sure it was gonna work, you know? I was like, I don't know what else we would have done. But we had to like walk through backstage and my like stylist and my wardrobe gal and like literally everybody, manager, everybody's like holding the dress and walking me through backstage. It was like quite the sight.
wow.
There were like three or four people to help me get on and off stage. And I was barefoot, which made it easy because I would have died. I was barefoot for both. I was like, I'm just always gonna be barefoot from now on. That made it easy. But I do love me some good shoes, but I just was barefoot, so that made it easy. So I was like walking backstage barefoot and then they were helping me, but it all worked out. It was great.
Yeah.
It was quite the wardrobe. It was.
Wow. Well done. And you made such an impact.
Thank you.
So you're from the Northwest, and we're here in British Columbia. I believe you went to Northwest University in Kirkland. Am I right?
Yes, you are. You've done your research. Yes.
Uh, well,
I
so
did.
what
I
did you
did.
study? What did you study, and why did you go there?
Yeah, so I studied music business, which was so sweet. That's actually why I went. When I graduated high school, I wasn't totally sure what to do. I knew that I wanted to do music, and I felt like that was like what God had called me to do, but I had no idea like what I was supposed to do in that or like
Hmm.
what that even looked like. It was just I really didn't know. I just knew that I loved music and I felt like God had called me to it. And so I also loved being home and I didn't want to go very far from home. And now I live in Nashville, but
Yeah.
I didn't want to go far from home. And we visited Northwest. I had some friends that went there and they had like had a smaller music business program, but they had kind of modeled it after Belmont's music program in Nashville. And I was like, oh, well, I could maybe learn some things similarly, but I wouldn't have to go to Nashville, even though Nashville's great and I love the
Yeah.
city. And so we ended up there. It was so sweet. I was gonna get like a double, sometimes it's easy to do a double major, and I had like a marketing thing, and I loved marketing classes, and that was super fun. But then my senior year, I ended up moving to Nashville and I took a semester off because I got to go on tour, and so then I finished online. So I just like dropped that, and I was just music business. But my
Oh,
sister actually came to school with me, so we were the same year. I took a gap year after high school, so then we were the same year in school. We were roommates for 2 years, then we were RA,
nice.
and that was really special. Then we moved to Nashville together, so that was fun.
Oh, very nice. And so you graduated. You graduated from Northwest, or
I
that's
did.
still
I
some.
did. I did. They let me graduate. I mean, barely, probably, but I after I moved to Nashville, I was pretty like I'm already here. But I did finish online. I was not a great online student. I have to be totally honest. But I did get to graduate with my class, which was really special. It was
That's great.
small school, so like small class, knew everybody in class, and it was really
Yeah.
special.
Were you on the worship team there?
I was, yeah, I
Yeah.
was. I was. The worship team at Northwest, because it is such a small school, is a very like music school. Like a lot of people were in the arts and like a lot of really incredible, like incredibly talented people. It kind of just like pulled people from all over the Northwest. So there's amazing worship leaders. And I honestly say that because I led worship before that, and I loved it, but I learned a lot about like leading worship and like being a part of, like a worship space like that, like from Northwest, and I loved it. So I made the team, but I didn't really make it my freshman year, and then I got to be a part of it my
Oh,
sophomore and
wow.
junior year. So yeah, yeah. But it
Yeah.
was very sweet. I was in the choirs and did all the things and loved it.
Well, you've got to be in the worship team Hall of Fame at Northwest now. That's awesome.
I don't know.
A quick story. I took my son to Northwest for a tour, right, to see if he would like it, and we picked the wrong person to give a tour because someone asked right away. I mean, within 2 minutes of starting, they asked, "Well, why did you come to Northwest?" And she said, "So I could meet my husband." And my
No,
son stopped in his tracks. He turned around and said, "Dad, no, this is not my school." I said, "Oh, you got to give it a better chance than that." He said, "No, no, I'm not coming here."
no
So
way. That
he
was
was
not,
this
was she
close.
kidding?
She was not kidding. She says, "I'm here for my MRS degree."
It is funny because I didn't really think that. I mean, people joked about it all the time because it was, it's a Christian school, so everybody has similar beliefs. So you're like, it does make sense that, but like, and then it was like Ring by Spring, but it was a real thing. But I didn't know, like, not a lot of, I mean, my friends didn't necessarily go there to do that. Like, they
Of
actually go there to
course.
study. So I didn't know, but that is wild.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Oh, I
Yeah.
love
You
that.
should cover that in tour training, not to say that. So anyway,
Yeah, that is a
um,
crazy thing to say while giving a tour. That is a crazy thing
yes.
to say.
Oh man.
That is
Anyway,
so.
so you're a Northwest girl. What were some of the early Christian concerts that you went to that kind of touched your heart and gave you that taste of this industry?
Yeah, I think the first concert I ever went to, there's Overlake Christian Church, which is like one of
Sure,
the
that's where I went when I
yeah,
lived
yeah.
there.
Yeah. So Overlake in that they had Jeremy Camp, and I think that was one of my first concerts, and his wife was still like, she was an artist, and so Addie,
Hmm.
and that was like, I think I would have been pretty little, but I think that was like my first concert, and I just like loved it. It was so much fun. And I'm pretty sure it was like Hawk Nelson that opened for them. I could have these
Oh
facts
yeah.
really wrong. That was like very like random, but that was really really cool. And then in middle school, we went down to Portland with my Bible study, and they had, and I can't remember what it was called, but it was like a girls' conference, and it was a couple days. So we went down to Portland, and it was like brought our Bible study, and there was a bunch of different speakers and musicians, and one of them was Jamie Grace, and
Mhm.
she was like so sweet and got on stage and was just like so like authentic and honest and real, and like it was just so sweet. And I remember being so like, I was like, oh, that'd be really cool to just like get up there. Like, I don't know, I remember being very inspired by her, and just like how she carried herself. And so those were a couple of like the first ones that I was like, oh, that would be so so cool.
Wow. Jamie Grace, awesome artist. Yeah, no doubt about it. So let's talk about Still Waters. Still Waters just rocked so many people, and frankly, it's touched my heart, and it has inspired me in ways that I never anticipated. But the story that I read, and I would like you to talk about it a little bit, but your great Aunt Maureen, I'm sure everyone asks you, but I want to make sure our readers and listeners know the crazy story of the very real great Aunt Maureen.
Yeah, yeah, I love when people ask too, because it's like I totally get, people are like, did you really have a great Aunt Maureen? And that's like my first. I'm like, yes, no, I did have a great Aunt Maureen. She was my mom's aunt, which I feel like is good to clarify. I didn't just rhyme. And when
And she led your mom to the Lord, right?
She did. She led my mom to Jesus, which is like so special. And so my mom would credit my great aunt to like obviously introducing her to Jesus. And even then when my parents started dating in college, my dad was he was a new believer, or still like quite he became a believer through Fellowship of Christian Athletes, FCA. But he remembers great aunt Marie, my mom's aunt, just like sitting with him
Mm.
and talking to him about Jesus. And that was like some of his really first like introductions to just the love of Jesus. And so that's like so sweet. Obviously my mom too, but so both of them, my great aunt was like very special in their lives. And she yeah, she was just the neatest woman. She found out she was going blind in her 40s. So that was like she was blind, I guess, really most of the latter of her life. And she decided to memorize the whole Bible, which is like wild. And so she did have most of it memorized, which is again so
Wow.
crazy and so beautiful. But I got to meet her when I was in middle school. Obviously being in the Northwest, she was on the East Coast at the end of her life. And so we took a trip out. I was in middle school and she was 103 when I met her, which is crazy. And she was so sweet. And she was like, I don't know, she was like the neatest, like tiniest little thing. And she was just so cute and very like, she was really fun. And I just remember her like coming down to greet us. And I don't know, she just was like, so cute, and she was like joking, and she had just this joy and this like you could tell this love for life, and she had just this incredible peace about her. And as my little sister and I were like quizzing her like with the Bible, we're like, do you really not have the Bible memorized? There was
Yeah.
just such this like love for scripture and this like beautiful peace about her, that was just so inspiring, even as like a middle schooler. And I remember, so she's 103 years old. She's in assisted living, and we're hanging out with her for a few hours, and it was just really special. And I remember being there. And then what during that time, she got like several phone calls, and she would just be like, "Oh, let me get this really quick," and she would go over and answer the phone, and it would be someone calling her and asking her for prayer. And like right on the spot, she would pray for them, and then she would just come back to the conversation. Like it was just like a part of
Wow.
her, like, and it was so cool to see that of someone in her hundreds, literally still loving people, ministering, praying over people. Like even though maybe she couldn't physically, be there for someone as much as she was praying, as that's the most important thing, right? And she was still praying
Yeah.
over people. And my when I first wrote the song, I remember sending it to my mom, and my mom was crying, and then she was like, well, she lived to be 105. And so that was like her correction of like, she's like, well, I know. And I was like, I know, mom, but I was like, this is,
It doesn't work.
yeah, it doesn't work. I was like, this is, I know, but I was like, we met when she was 103, so that's what works. So anyways, very
Wow.
sweet.
You talk about a legacy, and what her legacy is, and that's taking writing scripture on your heart to the next level. That's really amazing.
Mhm.
I also learned that Matthew West is the guy who signed you first. Is that right? Tell us about that.
Yeah. Isn't that wild? Yeah,
Yeah.
in 2016, my parents are like the most amazing people, and I would just say they are just champions of me and my siblings, and just have just encouraged us so much, and I'm so grateful for them. But being from a small town, and they're not really musical people. My mom played a little bit, and I had just this love for music, and so they were like, okay, what do we do? How can we encourage? And so my mom was always trying to figure out ways of like, okay, how could she, help me? And she found this songwriting conference in Aspen, Colorado, of all places. And so
No
she
kidding.
was like, how fun would it be if the two of us took a girls' trip and we went down to Aspen? And so it was just this small little Christian songwriting conference. And I had done like other conferences, and of course there was this big one in the Northwest. It was called CMS. Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
sure.
Yeah, and it was like people would come, and I remember I told Matt Marr this later because this is so funny, but I think I was in high school, and Matt Marr passed me, and he like asked me where the bathroom was, and I remember I was like, oh, it's over there, and I remember calling my mom and be like, oh my gosh, you have no idea who I just met, and so and I told him that story later, and he thought it was funny, of course, but I was like, he's the nicest guy, but anyways, I was like, that's so funny, so. Anyways, my mom and I took this trip down to Aspen, Colorado, and I was literally just thinking, how cool is this to get to, learn and get to see other, fellow songwriters. And there's other moments in life where I was like at these other conferences, I was like, oh, maybe I'll get discovered. I don't know. I was like, that'd be so cool. And that rarely happens. And also, I was like, oh, that'd be so cool. But this conference, I truly had none of that on my mind. Not that it would have been bad if I did, but I was just like, oh, this is going to be such a cool trip to go. It's a small little conference. I didn't even know all the speakers or people going. But then the first night of this conference, there's probably 100 people. Like it was really small, and they did an open mic night, and they had no one had signed up for it because it was like the opening night of the conference. But the guy in charge of the conference like he was just randomly calling out names, and so he called like four people, and no one would go sing, and I kind
Oh,
of got butterflies, and I was like, okay, if he calls me, what am I going to sing? I was like, I got to go up there if he calls my name. And so the next person he called was me. And so I had brought my guitar. I did not play guitar well at the time, but I had just met a gal who played ukulele, and she brought her ukulele, and she had happened to sit next to me and my mom. So I asked to borrow her ukulele. I got up and I sang this little love song I had written about my parents. And then I came off stage, and I just remember Matthew coming up to me and my mom and just asking if I had more music. And so he had asked me to send him songs if I had other songs, and
wow.
that's kind of how it got started. So then he invited me out to Nashville a few months later, and I started to write with him and another producer, and then he invited me out on tour a year later after that, a year and a half later after that, and then I moved to Nashville. And so I'm very thankful that God opened the door for me to come out in that way.
Wow. That's a crazy story.
Yeah, so that's a lot. You probably didn't even ask for all that information. Or
No,
like,
that's fantastic. It all happened at Aspen.
yeah,
Um,
it did. It did. Special
yeah,
place.
wouldn't have thought that. So I'm bouncing around here a little bit, but I want to move back to one of your songs, and we're playing it in pretty heavy rotation on our station. But your song "Honest," it is it is red meat. I mean, it is packed with significance. But I'm just curious, what's the background of that song, and what's it mean to you?
Thank you. Yeah, gosh, when I was writing that song, when I first started writing that song, I had gone through, so I shared the story about, getting to move to Nashville, and it's so exciting. And during that time, of course, I'm like, this is my dream. This is what I want to do. Like, I feel like this is, God has opened the doors, and it was such an exciting season. But there were so many people that kept telling me, and good, they were meaning well meaning. I understand now what they meant, but they were like, hey, this life that you're going to walk into is really, really hard. This is really hard. And like over and over again, so many people said this. And I was like, thank
Yeah,
you for the encouragement. I really appreciate the words. But I understand now what they're saying, but it is like anything in life, but especially in, music, you're putting your heart and soul, and you're, wearing your heart on your sleeve in these songs a lot of times, and kind of just like putting yourself out there. And it did. And then of course there's, the competitive nature of it, and the comparison, and all these things that, that are, hopefully not, but even though it's in a Christian music space, it's still a very competitive industry. That's just like the way it is. And so there were a lot of voices, that, especially like when I first came, it was so exciting, but then it wasn't happening the way that I thought it should happen. Like my career wasn't going the way I thought that it should go, and I had no idea, and I was so naive. But I had different people and voices being like, "Hey, you should be like this person. You should be like this person, and
mm,
you're not doing this."
sure.
And so that, as like a new, early 20s, young, like girl who doesn't know what she's doing at all, and then is already insecure and not sure what she should be doing, is like, I just started to beat myself up pretty bad. And so I
Mm.
was pretty hard on myself, and probably could have given myself a lot more grace. But that kind of came to like I was still touring a lot and getting to be on the road, and there were all these great things happening, but it wasn't happening the way that I thought it should. But of course, God had a much better plan. But at the time, while I was in it, I couldn't see that. And so when COVID happened, everything started to get canceled, and all the plans that I had started to get canceled, and all these things. And so I was able to kind of distract myself on the road, like from all these feelings. And I had
Mm.
this anxiety, and I wasn't sleeping, and all this stuff. And I finally wasn't able to distract myself anymore. And I had to like sit in this, kind of this like, anxiety, and just I didn't know it at the time. I was depressed. Like I wasn't myself. And for months, and I during COVID, everybody was like, writing all these songs and they were putting out albums like crazy. And I just couldn't do it because I couldn't sit down and write this thing that I'd love to do. Songwriting was all of a sudden such like a point of like, there was just a lot of friction when I would sit down and I would just cry and I would just be like, I'm so, and it was all this stuff.
Mm.
And God was so kind and so patient during that season, and He put different people in my life to speak truth over me. But one of those people was my sister Lindsay, who had moved to Nashville with me. She had had an opportunity
Wow.
at the same time, and so we lived together. And when no one else and she saw me at my worst, she just continued to speak truth over me. And she was the one. She encouraged me to go to counseling, and she was like, "Hey, you need to go do this." And I'm so thankful that she did. I did not want to go, but there's this free counseling in Nashville for artists, which is like so
Hmm.
special. And I'm so thankful. It's called Porter's Call. And you probably heard of that. But
Very much.
I ended up going, and it did not happen overnight, but I felt God just like slowly just kind of like rebuild my love for songwriting. And I more had to kind of like be like, okay, there's freedom in like, I don't have to do this. I don't have to put myself through this. And that was sort of one of the things that my counselor said. She was like, hey, you can quit right now. And I was like, well, I don't want to quit, but you're right. Like, why would I feel this way about this
Yeah,
thing I'm supposed to love? This isn't supposed to be. Gosh, I get to do music for a living. Like, this is the coolest thing ever. Of course, there's going to be pressure and there's going to be things like that. But really, like, it shouldn't feel like this. And so I think there was freedom in that. And then I was like, no, I think I do still have stuff to say. And like I feel like God in His kindness just started to like reignite my love for songwriting again and for singing. And so Honest, that's like a long story of like Honest was one of
mm,
the songs that was kind of that came out of that season of just like I don't understand what's going on. I don't even have the words right now. And I feel like that's happened in different seasons of my life. And I feel like we all go through those at different times, right? Where you just don't have the words and you
sure.
know it's true, you know that God is good. Like I knew that He was good, but I did not feel it. Like I knew He was good, but I didn't feel like I was like, why do I feel like this? I don't understand why I feel like this. I don't want to feel this way. And so but I feel like that's what has helped me just kind of like given me words to be like, okay, I might not understand what you're doing. I might not feel, like worshiping right now, but I can still trust you. And so that's a lot. That's a long story and probably way more than you wanted,
Wow.
but that's like
God,
where that song kind of, that was kind of coming out of that season. And so I'm grateful for it because also I just feel like, I write these songs and then they'll have new meanings to me later too. Like, and I'm thankful for that because I feel like God just does that with music. So that's a long answer, but
no, that's very good. And Leanna, one of the things that we do that's different is we seek out emerging artists. We seek out those artists that can't get through the few gatekeepers there in Nashville, but still have great music that the Lord has inspired, right? And what just think about this path that you've gone. You just explained a very real uh, situation that after being found by Matthew West and you're on tour, you leave school, you're hitting this great success, but then you have this period that's very challenging, right? And then 2025, you're the new artist of the year. You have the breakout hit of the year. Isn't that how God works? And so, what a great inspirational path. And with that, what would you tell artists that are featured in our magazine that are at the early part of that journey?
yeah. Something I've felt this year, and especially at those events, like I felt like I've been around a long time now, like which is crazy, almost 10 years, which is just so funny to say and be like, that's wild. And I'm so, so grateful for God's timing in it. But one, I would say you're not alone. This career can be super isolating. And I think that's why like I'm so grateful for what you guys do in encouraging emerging artists, encouraging young artists, but it can feel really isolating. And I just want to encourage you, you're not alone. And there's going to be a lot of times that it feels like you are alone and nobody understands, but you're not. And I think there is such a community, and it can be scary to, sometimes it can be intimidating to like reach out or to just be like, okay, is this person feeling what I'm feeling? And probably they are, or they have felt that at some time and another, at some point or another. It's a tough career, but when you are writing or singing or sharing what God has put on your heart, like you have a story to share, and nobody can share it the way that you can. Like I think it's like we all like it's not like I'm writing anything new, I'm talking about forgiveness, I'm talking about God's love, I'm talking, but like but God has given me like a way to look at the world like in a unique lens, the same way He's given you that. And your story is unique to you and how you interpret things and see the world. And so I would just encourage you, like God has put this on your heart for a reason, and He's given you words and a story to share. And so don't let anybody discount that, and then just continue to lean into Him more than anyone, because there will be times when you do feel alone. And I would just encourage you to always go back to the word, always go back to his word, to his promises over your life, and just continue to lean into that.
Well, you're a living example of that. And so, just to wrap up, when we were at the K-Love Awards on the red carpet, it was so funny. The people around me, they see this tall guy walking down the red carpet. Scott, who's that? Who's that? I said, oh, well, that's Cody Zeller. He's married to Leanna Crawford. Well, what's his deal? So, big Indiana University, NBA first round draft pick. Um, but it was so funny to see everyone, and I'm sure you're used to that, even at the Doves. He stands up in the front row. You can't miss it, even in the back at Bridgestone. But congratulations on your marriage. You're a year and a half into it, and it just seems like it's been a fairy tale. But he's an Indiana guy. You guys got to be excited about the football team, huh?
Oh my goodness, you should have seen him. Was it last
I,
week? 2 weeks ago, when they won the Big Ten championship. He was doing laps around our house. He was like, "This is the best day ever." I mean, for those that I did not know what Indiana, meant to Indiana, especially basketball. I didn't know until we started dating. But now Indiana's a football school, and it's so exciting. And so we are pumped. I was wearing my candy stripe pants. I finally got a pair of candy stripe pants, so I was wearing
yeah,
those football game. So we're trying to figure out if we can make it to a football game. But he's a big football guy, even though he played basketball. He loves his football. So we're so excited to be
well,
cheering on Indiana. But yeah, it's pretty exciting. Pretty exciting. But yeah,
it
he's
is.
like a little kid on Christmas. I think that was the best day.
I bet.
It's like our wedding day, and then maybe that. I'm just kidding.
Well, you guys are going to play either Oklahoma or Alabama. I'm definitely, and millions of others are definitely Indiana fans after a year like this. Leanna, you are an inspiration to so many, and your great Aunt Maureen lives on in the hearts of people we won't know until we're in heaven. But I'm just praying for a great 2026 for you. And my last question is, any plans to come up to Canada?
Oh, I really want to get up there. I would love to get up there. So I'm hoping to make that happen sometime soon. I need to get
Yes.
back up
Talk to
to,
your management. You got to
yes,
come up to Canada.
yes, I need to work on that because I would love to. I would love,
Yeah.
love to. Hopefully I can get up to Vancouver too. That would be perfect.
Yes, I would agree. Thank you so much. And it's been a real pleasure and a delight.
Thank you so much. Thank you.